guest. As I mentioned earlier, African Liberation Day, or Africa Liberation Day, was celebrated this weekend around the world. It's a time when Africans come together to take stock of what is happening in regards to the liberation of Africans, a process which began many years ago, and which some say, including my guest in studio today, that the liberation isn't fully complete. Joining me in studio is Bukka Ngesa Omole, National Organizing Secretary, Social Democratic Party of Kenya. He also was the chairperson of the Local Organizing Committee, Kenyan chapter.
Yes.
And right here next to me is Sobukwe Shakur. He's a member of the Central Committee, All African People's Revolutionary Party, and also a member of the Local Organizing Committee. Gentlemen, welcome once again. Good to have you back. Let me start with you, Bukka. Get your thoughts. How are the celebrations this weekend? What sort of proclamations and agreements were made? Just bring us into that.
Thank you very much, Oege. Thank you very much for the invitation. We had a very successful ALD celebrations. Not celebrations per se, but
there might not be too much to celebrate.
But the heroic resistance of the African people against colonialism, that is what something to celebrate about. That you can be colonized for more than 400 years and you're still alive today in this studio. That's something to be proud about. So we had big activities. We started off at just like last time I had indicated to the viewers, we had a symposium to discuss 7 very important points, to just say how relevant is Pan-Africanism, how relevant is ALD as an African Liberation Day in our today's struggles. After that, this time it was just not an elitist kind of celebration. We took over the celebrations to Mathare, where we had talks, and we had how relevant is the people, what you call the people in the informal settlement. How relevant is the day to them? Do they have, do they feel the independence of African country? Do they feel that they are part and parcel of this process?
I'm curious to hear what they said to you.
It was a pity because, first of all, they realized that there was a liberation, but the fruits of that liberation are for only a super minority. They were telling us they have never felt any right to land, any right to food, any right to medicine, but they are very hopeful that if there are a different crop of people that are trying to come back to organize them in a more different way than the way the other politicians organizes them in Mathare or other NGOs or other what you call aid organizations are organizing them, then possibly there could be a liberation that they could be felt by the masses of Mathare. For example, we had a very good attendance in Mathare. We did not have a hired crowd there. We did not have people mobilized. We did not have a head count of the people who attended and giving money to the organizers. We had people that voluntarily came to hear what we were there to tell them on the African Liberation Day. And the issue of land, we were in that Austin grounds, and everybody was asking us, what about the land issue? We're hearing you talking about Dedan Kimathi for the first time. We've never known him as our hero. We are talking about issues that have never been talked about. You're talking about armed struggle. Is it relevant today in the African society? And we had a very good debate there. And that's what we will want Kenyans to say, that we had one conclusion. All Kenyans or all Africans of goodwill, let us join an organization that is organizing for liberation of the African people. And from there, the ALD proclamation is that let us reconnect those struggles and change the way we do our politics.
Okay.
Now you are just talking about corruption here. But we also discussed corruption as part and parcel of a capitalist system. So I will leave it there.
Leave it there. Let me bring in Sobukwe just to get your thoughts. Just bring us back to what do Africans need liberation from? Because there might some whom I just have tweeted and said, African liberation, what do we need liberation from? I can travel to any part of the world I want to right now. I can work anywhere, or at least I believe I can. What do I need liberation from?
Well, I think we touched on some of the things a little bit the last time we were here. Of course, we were talking about the fact that many of our resources here in Africa are controlled from outside. When we talk about the question of land, as my brother can, and we can look at southern Africa, where we still see 90% of the best farming land being held by settlers, people who came from Europe and took land. We know those situations even exist here in Kenya a little bit, and other places around the continent. We have land struggles. We have land and our resources. We talked about the whole question of the control of the mining industry, the gold, the diamond, the platinum, the
oil,
and all of these things that we have here are not under our control. And when you look at the fact that here we are, a continent, a continent in which we have foreign bases. Like in Djibouti, we have the U.S., we have the British, we have the French, we have all these staging areas for drones, and we have all these outside forces on our land. Could you imagine having in Russia a foreign base, Africa having a base in Russia, or Africa having one in the United States? Exactly. When you think about the control that we don't have of our own, we don't have a continental-wide army that defends that defends Africa.
The borders
of Africa. We have contradictions. Look, it should be easier for me to, which it isn't on every part of the continent. It should be easier for me to be able to travel to any part of the African continent than it should be for me to travel to Europe. It should be easy for me to communicate with the modern communications and satellites. Africa only has 2 satellites, and those have only been put up in the last 5 years. When you think about it, when you think about the communications, much of it goes through Europe, much of it goes through the U.S., much of it goes outside of the continent. So how do we, as a continent, have more and a country, really? You know, because really we really are a country. When we think about it, how can we control those factors that impact our everyday? That's what we need. That's why we need liberation.
Okay.
Liberation would be control of our own resources, our own communications, our own the things that impact our lives. You know, just really the control of. Just like every other major country, the control of our lives, our everyday lives, being able to produce for ourselves and control what we consume and who consumes what. And that's a whole nother struggle, the struggle that the masses of our people
that don't get to enjoy the resources of the continent.
Exactly. We're under health cared, we're under housed, you know, just the basic needs when it comes to the masses. He talked about Mathare. Of course, Mathare is very underserved, you know. And when we look at this whole the whole nation of Kenya, I know that there's, you know, the ratio of doctor to patient is very, very, very high.
It should be 1 to what is it, 17,000 or something? I'll confirm that. Yeah.
Yes, it's a very high number.
Very high number.
Here's a small country like Cuba, has the highest ratio. I mean, the lowest ratio of doctor to patient. They actually still do house calls. And I think that it also speaks to our power to determine what our foreign policy is.
Okay.
I mean, when we think about something like the question of Palestine, you know, the whole world, the majority of the world, is looked at that the killings that took place on the March of Return. Over 60 people being killed and shot down on a resolution that has already been decided in the UN. It's already been said that these people have the right to return, have never been allowed to return. Africa, even in the AU, they said that they supported this right. They talked out against the killing of the 60 people, but we have nothing. We did nothing as a continent, and some countries shamefully, and unfortunately I think Kenya is one, shamefully had a policy in which they actually allowed their diplomats to go to the celebration of the opening of the U.S. Embassy. But I'm saying that if you had a strong country policy across the continent, yes, we would have impacted. We could have had an economic boycott. We could support BDS across the country. We would stop. We would have did like South Africa done. We would have dismissed. Because
they recalled their ambassador.
Exactly.
Yeah, let me get Booker in on this. Booker, there are those who say that Africans need to be liberated, not from colonialists, but from poor leadership. and retrogressive thinking. What would you say to them?
What I can tell you that what they're calling about poor leadership is what we inherited from the colonial system. We changed the white man with a black man, but everything else remained the same. So we have still the colonial system in Kenya. So until we realize that the problem is it's only the system that is governing us, other than the people there, we have to then rethink. For example, even if we do rethink that there is one individual, if we talk about who controls what we are calling the capital in this country, it's incredible. It's still there. In fact, the local elite, the political elite that we are blaming for this, they are even too weak to even oppress us more. So they are forming alliances of oppression. For example, we localized ALD this time, and we were talking about we don't have discussion, for example, in this country about super exploitation by multinationals. Look at agriculture sector in this country. We are the biggest exporter of tea, but if you go to Kericho, the people who work in those tea farms are the poor of the poorest. Nobody's talking about, we are only interested what tea companies or what tea exporters make at the end of it. Go to Kwale, where we are extracting titanium, and look at the way the people in Kwale live. That means the foreign domination in this country is appalling. The people who are controlling our economy are foreign multinationals. The people we see as politicians in this country are just prefects. They are only people that they are benefiting for some small gains in terms of money. But the real debate that needs to take place is to change the neo-colonial system that we have, which is purely capitalist system, big business controlling it, and replace it with the system. Because ALD is about Pan-Africanism, which is the objective. But how do we achieve that objective? There must be a software that runs it, and that is scientific socialism.
Which is actually what I want to bring in Sobukwe. So we can sit here and not rant, but speak truth about the challenges affecting society.
Exactly.
So what are you guys doing and not you guys, because I guess ALD should speak for all Africans, even though some may not have known about it. What sort of declarations were made on Saturday that you then say by the time we come back to your studio next year, as the local organizing committee of ALD, we have committed to push for 1, 2, 3, 4, or the people that we met with have agreed to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Specifics.
Well, I think that first of all, as you know, these weapons, one of the biggest weapons is a question of ideas. It's a struggle of ideas. One of the things is that how many times has African Liberation Day been on a national stage and national television, and even Kenya or anywhere else in Africa? Here we are, this declaration for African freedom was done in 1958. Yet Africa and its institutions have not yet embraced it the way that it would to popularize it among the masses of their own people. Our job is, of course, to popularize it among the masses of our people, so our people start to talk about their own liberation. Nobody liberates the oppressed, and that's true for even at the top. So we can't expect the leadership that is neo-colonial.
They're not interested.
Not interested. So we have to take it to the masses. It's about organization. So our job is to, by next year, to make African Liberation Day even more celebrated and commemorated by the masses of the masses of people in Kenya. And then their job will be to take that next step to demand that it become a national holiday here. And that it not only becomes a national holiday so we can dress up and look pretty, but it becomes an
and I saw that in a few countries, yes.
It's about us demanding the things that people must have. That means that we have to demand the kind of representation that we really want to have here in this country. That means that we're moving towards a people state. When we look at the devolution, we talk about devolution in this country. We talk about taking that constitution and moving things down to the level of the districts and what have you. But we have to also talk about it in the context of empowering. Where are the youth? Where are the youth in the government? Where are the
They're
women
waiting for
and
jobs.
but I'm saying
Waiting for jobs somewhere.
they can't just wait. They have to be the ones that make decisions. They have to be given the opportunity to talk about these things. And when we talk about youth leader being arrested, that means that he doesn't have the interest of the youth in the country. Because if we want a kind of person who sees the masses, the people, the youth, their brothers and sisters as them, that's the kind of leadership you need, and that leadership has to come up from the bottom. Our job, again, is we have a lot of people out there, but how many of them are in any organization working for the advancement of their people? Because politicians, the parties, they come in and mobilize.
Yes, when they need to.
They come in to mobilize. They don't come in to organize. They don't come in to organize the people. So the people in Mathare have to organize themselves.
Okay. People need to organize themselves. Let me give you each a brief final comment. What do you want Kenyans? So we've talked about sort of the African example and the challenges facing Africa. Give me a final comment and make sure you really bring in the Kenyan story in this.
My final comment is we will need people to be mobilized through a political program.
Okay.
That means you have a political program and people vote a program, but not an individual.
How different are you from the Jubilee and NASA? Because some would say that you're simply hoping to form another grouping altogether.
Actually, what the ALD did this time was to expose the hypocrisy of the political system that we have in Kenya. That in actual sense, the big political players that we have in this country are only different in what we call form, but not in essence. In terms of political ideology, both of them actually proclaim that they are social democratic parties, but even in their action, they are not social democratic. What we are saying that we need an alternative political ideology, and that alternative political ideology that works toward Pan-Africanism is socialism, and that was the role of Social Democratic Party of Kenya in the ALD, that we are going to come with a revolutionary political program and help all these progressive organizations mobilize the Kenyan people, organize them to change the political system.
How will you prevent the corrupt forces that have infiltrated you say the political parties are not working, people have their interests. What will stop them from now simply joining your bandwagon if yours seems to be the more attractive one? In one or two words, how do you respond to that?
First of all, the political system at the moment is not organized. What they actually do is you try to turn money into votes. And now when you are in power, you try to turn votes back to the money. So if you do not have people, if you do not educate and organize people, then they will fall to such lies of the politicians. So you have to educate and then you organize them and tell them, hey, now they are coming and they are bringing in the money. But when they have when they brought, you don't expect, for example, this, we are talking about corruption in Kenya, but you don't expect somebody to burn 100 million and then sit there and wait for a salary of maybe 200 or 300,000 shillings. He wants to turn back the votes back to money. And we have seen most of members of parliament, we have seen the cabinet secretaries, we have seen even the people that are gearing towards the 2022 election. Their main objective at the moment is to accumulate as much more money as possible, not to organize the Kenyan people. That is the gap that all the organizations that came together to organize the ALD should do. The last thing is that they need to introduce progressive debates. For example, we have the debates, we are just talking about Tanzanian parliament and we are talking about the South African parliament debating about issues of land, and it is very radical, expropriation without compensation. We don't have such debates taking place in Kenyan parliament. The last thing we are seeing a big anti-Zionism movement all over the world. In Kenya, the parliament is so quiet. We don't see any condemnation of Israel. We don't see any support for the Palestinian people here. So it's a responsibility for all these progressive organizations to bring these progressive debates with them.
Fair.
The last thing is the issue of Western Sahara that was discussed. Remember last time we talked about the last colony in Africa, where we see the Morocco kingdom colonizing one of the countries in Africa, and then other African countries accepting it and even being admitted.
I want to make sure I also give him 1 minute. 1 minute exactly. He's taking your time, so you can square it out with him.
No problem. But I can say it quickly, because one of the things, of course, is when you talk about the difference, is that when you invest in the masses of people to organize them, and you give them the political tools to make discuss, to actually be principles, ideologies. That when they're armed with ideologies, when they understand the difference between capitalism and that there is an alternative economic social system like socialism and other kinds of systems that empower them, as opposed to thinking that there is only the question of one form of group of capitalists versus another group of capitalists and just buying their votes. Once they are clear on their empowering themselves, it'll change any political system that comes into power, because now they can measure it. What they should demand from any new political party that comes to the thing is, what are your ideas? What are your principles? So we can hold you to those principles. Now, when you talk about it, for me, I'm with the All African People's Revolutionary Party. There are small Pan-African political parties and political organizations around the globe, including all throughout Africa. When we look at a Socialist Democratic Party here, and it talks about Pan-Africanism, what is their relationship to the Pan-African parties over in Tanzania, the Pan-African organizations in Ghana?
Okay.
Our job and our responsibility is to move as a party to help bring those parties together. Because again, every struggle that we've won, every struggle that we've won in Africa has been when we have been organized across countries. When we think about the success of the liberation struggles, it was when Tanzania was a base for South Africa, when Ghana was a base for liberation struggles all throughout the continent. That is the way that we move forward. The more organized we are, and bringing all of our strong Pan-African forces together, the more progress we made. It is historically proven.
I think you've wrapped it up on a high note. That's Sobukwe Shakur. He's a member of the Central Committee, All African People's Revolutionary Party. You can really feel the fire in his belly as he talks about this. And we had Buko Mole, also the National Organizing Secretary, Social Democratic Party of Kenya, and they both were on the committee of the African Liberation Day. Well, briefly, of course, for those of you who are football fans, you know that Real Madrid have really enjoyed